Even though I still lived at home when I turned 40, my younger sister, Mary, always looked down on me deep inside. In fact, one of the reasons I hadn't married was because of Mary. But she used that as a means to mock me and always ridiculed me. However, ever since I told her we should cut ties, she hasn't been involved with me at all. Then one day, Mary showed up and was like, "I'm gonna live here from now on. But, since I'm expecting a child, there isn't enough room. So, Sarah, you need to move out within 3 days." When I told our parents about it, they seemed taken aback and said, "Then, we'll move out too." I was relieved to hear that from them. Mary, unaware that both our parents are gonna leave, will be in for a shock. She probably can't imagine a future where she ends up unhappy. My name is Sarah. I have a younger sister, 5 years my junior. Her name is Mary. Unlike me, who has an average height, weight, and a face you'd see anywhere, Mary has a model-like figure, a cute face, and has always been treated kindly by others. Relatives always doted on the younger, adorable Mary more than they did on me. Even our grandparents, I believe, adored Mary more than they did me. Among those friends and acquaintances who wanted to get close to Mary, some compared our looks, mocking me and boosting Mary's ego. Maybe it was the accumulation of such instances. But Mary gradually started to believe she was superior in everything compared to me. However, even if Mary was praised more for her looks, I was the more serious one, so I excelled in academics. So, Mary kept pestering our parents and was like, "Show me the grades Sarah got when she was my age," and when they actually showed the grades from when I was Mary's age, it turned out my grades were better. Mary, in her anger, sometimes tore up my certificate right then and there. Our parents feared that if this continued, Mary's negative behavior would persist into adulthood. My dad was often like, "Stop comparing yourself to Sarah all the time. Mary is Mary, and Sarah is Sarah. It's silly to compare." When Mary compared our looks and was like, "Sarah, you're really ugly. Can you please not call yourself my sister?" my mom scolded her and was like, "Mary, if you keep up with this bad attitude, no matter how cute you are now, people will quickly see how ugly your personality is and won't want to be around you." However, even though mom and dad tried their best to correct Mary's behavior, most of our relatives took Mary's side, and above all, our grandparents absolutely adored Mary. I don't know what Mary said to them, but our grandparents were like, "It's terrible to be so hard on Mary. Maybe you're just jealous of her. Why don't you send Sarah away?" to my parents. Before we knew it, our grandparents started giving allowance and gifts only to Mary, but not to me. Upon seeing this, my dad was furious. He was like, "How can you treat the same grandchildren differently based on their looks? Are you really my parents?" We're done, and he decided to cut ties with our grandparents. Since then, we've never been to our grandparents' house or attended any family gatherings. Mary seemed unhappy about it, but since mom and dad were firm on their decision, she probably realized that making a fuss on her own would be pointless. When Mary reached middle school, it seemed she wanted to be adored in circles outside of our family. At Mary's middle school, the reputation she had differed vastly between boys and girls. The boys referred to Mary as the best girl they'd like to date in school, while the girls seemed to label her as a mean girl. By the time Mary started middle school, I was already in high school. I only heard these rumors when I learned that one of my classmates had a younger brother attending Mary's middle school. Apparently, the rumors about Mary were widespread throughout the school. From what I'd gathered, whenever a friend of hers got a boyfriend, within just a few days, that boyfriend was dating Mary. In short, Mary had been snatching away her friends' boyfriends. At first, she was only doing it to her close friends' boyfriends, but as she ran out of female friends, she began targeting any girl she could find who had a boyfriend. Honestly, when I heard this, even though she's my younger sister, I was like, yeah, she'd probably do something like that. As Mary used to try and take my stuff all the time. The crayons and paints I'd get would often end up being used by her. It seems like she's always had a knack for taking things from others. However, even after I told our parents about Mary's reputation at school, and they got mad at her, I doubted she was gonna reflect on her actions. I mean, she's been like this forever. I believe her arrogant nature might be due to our relatives and grandparents always praising her too much. But those relatives and grandparents aren't gonna look after her forever. She needs to realize soon that her attitude is self-destructive, or her future might be in jeopardy. That's why, hoping for some change, I'd talk to our parents about what was being said of Mary at school. That evening, our parents confronted her, asking if the rumors about her at school were true. I thought she might dodge the question, but listening from behind the door, Mary was like, those guys just say I'm better than their exes, right? It just means I'm a better catch, doesn't it? Why lecture me instead of confronting the school when you realize your daughter is being badmouthed? Do you even really care about me? She didn't seem to feel any guilt about stealing boyfriends at all. Even though those rumors exist because of her actions, she still had the nerve to blame our parents who were trying to discipline her. Both Mom and Dad were dumbfounded by Mary's logic. Every time Mary caused another issue, our parents tried to advise her, but she never listened. At this point, both our parents and I thought her behavior was beyond correction. But our concerns for Mary only lasted until she graduated high school. With college, she announced she was gonna live with an older boyfriend near her university. She persuaded our parents and left home. She never came back. Even in her graduating year, she didn't contact us. I don't even know if Mary managed to graduate and get a job. Since my parents were paying for tuition, it seemed they knew that Mary would eventually graduate from college. However, they were taken aback by Mary's lack of communication with the family. They were like, we really can't imagine a person like this succeeding in the real world. But at the same time, they were also like, if she's not gonna reach out from her end, that's fine. We don't need to force a relationship on her. So, they decided to leave Mary be. But, Mary, who had usually brush off whatever happened at home, keenly returned to our childhood house when I brought my fiancé, Thomas. Apparently, a relative who lived close to our home and adored Mary had saw me bring a man, seemingly my boyfriend, home. They immediately informed Mary. Is this guy your boyfriend, Sarah? He's incredibly handsome. He looks like he's got his act together too. I'm surprised he wants to marry you. Without hesitation, Mary, who had suddenly appeared at our house, spotted Thomas. While I was away from my seat, she took my spot and snugly wrapped her arm around Thomas, showering him with compliments. Even when our mom and dad told her to stop, she was like, if he's gonna marry Sarah, he'll be my big brother, right? I just want to get along with him as family from now on. She didn't let go of Thomas. Moreover, when I returned from the restroom and was firmly like, Mary, let him go, she started to fake cry. She was like, you always do this. Everyone always treats me so unfairly. Thomas watched in confusion as the situation unfolded. The gathering soon dispersed, and I asked Thomas to leave. My parents were furious with Mary. I felt relieved thinking the matter was settled, but 3 months before our wedding, I suddenly received a message from Thomas wanting to call off our engagement. When I told him I couldn't accept this just through a message on WhatsApp, Thomas was like, then, let's meet at a cafe tomorrow. The next day, I went to a cafe at the appointed time. When I arrived, Mary and Thomas were already there, sitting close and smiling at each other. Thomas looked serious when he saw me, while Mary had a smug expression. Thomas was like, I can't see myself living with you, especially after how you treated your sister Mary and how your parents reacted. That's why I want to break off our engagement, Thomas said earnestly. Mary smirked at his words. Having seen them cozying up in the cafe earlier, my love for Thomas had already gone cold. I was like, so, how much are you gonna pay me for breaking our engagement? Thomas was like, compensation? We aren't even married. We haven't even had the wedding, and it can still be cancelled, his eyes widening in surprise. I sighed deeply and replied, we exchanged engagement rings, we introduced each other to our parents, and we had a wedding planned. When an engagement is called off in such a situation, the one causing the breakup has to pay compensation. I tried to explain it patiently, but Thomas, looking dumbfounded, was like, if we're talking about the cause, it's on you. It's because you didn't treat Mary right. There's no way that's the reason. You cheated on me with Mary, so the breakup is on you. It seemed that Thomas was more upset about being the reason for the breakup than about paying compensation. We argued in the cafe about it. All the while, Mary was clinging to Thomas, making it clear that they were the root of the problem. I decided to call Thomas's parents to the cafe to judge who was in the wrong. Even though Thomas was their son, they must have realized the situation was inexcusable, as he had brought another woman to a serious talk about breaking off an engagement and remained close to her throughout. "Sarah, we're truly sorry for what our son has done. He's talking nonsense right now, but we promise to pay for his sin," he assured me. A few days later, I decided to hire a lawyer for this matter, and eventually a court awarded me certain amount. I was told that Mary and Thomas still didn't agree with the situation, but it was likely that Thomas's parents covered the payment for him. With that, I thought, I'd never involve myself with Mary or the backstabbing Thomas ever again. Both my dad and mom had said they disowned Mary for stealing my fiancé, Thomas. I thought Mary would never return to our family home again. However, when I was around 40, working at home, my cell phone suddenly rang. It was a blocked call, but I thought it might be work-related, so I decided to answer it. Then, I heard a familiar female voice on the other end. "Hey, I bet you're still doing well. Because of me, you missed out on marriage, right? You've probably been single all these years. Such a pitiful life living alone." The mocking tone made me instantly realize it was Mary. Only she made fun of me like that and called me in this tone. I was like, "What do you want? If you've got no business, I'm gonna hang up." Mary was like, "Hang on. What I've got to tell you might just change your life. You'll regret it if you hang up now." If she was going this far, there was no reason not to listen. Given her audacity, I felt compelled and was like, "What's that?" "I'm moving back to our family home. But since I'm expecting a child, there isn't enough room, so you need to leave within 3 days. See, I'm pregnant. For our parents, it's the grandchild they've been waiting for. I'm doing what a single woman like you couldn't." "What are you talking about? You were disowned, remember? Since I can give them the grandchild you couldn't, I'm sure they'll welcome me with open arms. If I ask them to kick you out, I bet they'll do it," she replied confidently. I seriously doubted that. Both mom and dad were furious about Mary stealing Thomas away from me. They were like, "That's an unimaginably low act for any human." They wouldn't simply forgive Mary because she's having a child. Moreover, even though my engagement broke off was caused by Mary, she didn't feel guilty. Moreover, the damages were paid by Thomas, or more precisely, by Thomas's parents. Mary never apologized to me, nor did she make amends for her actions. This had always angered my parents. Even if she showed up now, they'd probably just guide her the door to leave. But Mary seemed convinced that our parents would be on her side and was like, "So, make room for me. No place for a single woman in our family home." And without hearing my reply, she hung up. Although I was reluctant, I talked to my dad and mom that I'd been contacted by Mary, that she was apparently pregnant, and that she was coming back to our house, and told me to leave so that she could get a room for the child. Both my dad and mom looked absolutely shocked for a moment, but after a short pause, as if thinking this was unbelievable, they shrugged and were like, "Well, guess we gotta leave too." I was relieved to hear those words. It seemed like dad and mom weren't really on Mary's side after all. My mom was like, "When did Mary say she'll be back?" Only then did I realize Mary hadn't told me exactly when she'd return. I honestly told my mom that I was told to leave within 3 days. Mom was like, "In that case, we better start packing soon." My mom was also like, "Knowing Mary, even if Sarah doesn't leave this house, she'll barge in, make herself at home, and force Sarah out. We don't want to live with her," and Dad, sitting next to her, nodded in agreement. From that moment on, we started our moving preparations at a breakneck speed. Since we didn't know when Mary might show up, we reached out to Thomas's parents using the contact information we had kept for emergencies. What we found out was quite a shocker. Turns out, Thomas's dad is a big company CEO, and Thomas had been groomed every day to be the next CEO. He met me and we got engaged, but then he cheated on me with my sister, leading to our broken engagement. They believed he couldn't be trusted as a professional, so he got demoted to a regular employee or something. But it seems he had been hiding this from Mary. Mary always talked about the CEO Thomas as if he's some big deal, so he must have thought she'd leave him if she found out he wasn't going to be CEO. But Mary, believing Thomas would become a CEO and make lots of money, had been making extravagant purchases. Somehow, Thomas was dipping into his savings to fund Mary's spending sprees, but when he ran out of money, he tried to talk her into saving. However, she snapped back at him and was like, "If you're gonna be a CEO, you should have money, right?" And in the heat of the moment, Thomas was apparently like, "The reason I'm not gonna be CEO is because I was gonna marry you." By that time, they had found out that Mary was pregnant, so they decided against divorce. But she was like, "I'm going back to my parents' house for a while." You're broke, right? I bet my parents, who can support my single sister, have some money. And now, it seems she's living in a hotel. After a while, when relatives near our home confirm I was moving, I suppose she was planning to come to my place. And yet, I wonder if Mary thinks of me as a jobless loser or something. She can't fathom the idea that I might be making money on my own. Perhaps she's always thought of her sister, me, as lesser than her. Since Mary isn't working now, she probably assumed that I'm not only jobless but also unmarried and living off my parents. That's not the case though. After we moved, I got a call from an unknown number. Answering it, sure enough, it was Mary. "Hey! I see the house is up for sale. Where are Mom and Dad?" "Mom and Dad? They moved to a place they've always dreamed of." "I didn't hear about that. Why would I tell someone I've cut ties with?" It seems Mary went to our old family home and finally realized it was on sale. Well, if there's a sign of "for sale" in front of the house, anyone would get that no one's living there anymore. "And you? Still clinging to Mom and Dad?" "Nope, me? I decided to follow my husband on his overseas assignment." "Wait, husband!" She must have assumed I was still single, but it's been a few years since Mary stole Thomas from me. In that time, I found someone special, and we've been married for 3 years now. Given that our child is still young, I initially held off on traveling abroad. My husband went ahead, but now it seems all right to take our child and join him. I was like, "I have no intention of helping you, nor do our parents. Just do your best with your beloved husband, okay?" and hung up. I canceled my cell phone service before leaving the country and set off for overseas. I still occasionally hear from Thomas's parents, so I get updates about Thomas and Mary. Without a family home to return to, and no knowledge of where her parents or sister are, Mary is left with only Thomas to rely on. It seems that after Mary drained all their savings, Thomas had a wake-up call and was like, "We won't divorce since we're having a child, but from now on, you're on an allowance." But most of that allowance went towards repaying the money she squandered, so she was left with not even a cent. While taking care of their child, she eventually had to work and live with her in-laws. Now, she's working hard every day to pay off she owed. Guess a marriage stemming from deceit never really turns out well, huh?